Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're going to be covering the reprints found within King's Court. Queen's Knight is a light attribute warrior type normal monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and 1600 defense. King's Knight is a light attribute warrior type level 4 with 1600 attack and 1400 defense. The effect, when this card is normal summoned, while you control Queen's Knight, you can special summon one Jack's Knight from your deck. The benefit of this card is it provides you an instant access to your Jack's Knight. Also, with Jack's Knight being a level 5 monster, it would normally need a tribute summon, but you are able to have all three cards essentially on the field by using this card's effect, so long as you've already got Queen's Knight on the field. Jack's Knight is a light attribute warrior type normal monster. It's a level 5 with 1900 attack and 1000 defense. Arcana Knight's Joker is a light attribute warrior type fusion monster. It's a level 9 with 3800 attack and 2500 defense. It requires as its fusion materials one's Queen's Knight, one Jack's Knight, and one King's Knight. And the effect is, a fusion summon of this card can only be done with the above materials. Once per turn, when a spell or trap card or a monster effect is activated that targets this face-up card on the field, as a quick effect, you can discard the same type of card, monster, spell or trap card, to negate the effect. This card is actually very usable because, yes, it does require the three specific cards, but it has 3800 attack points. That's very decent for a level 9 monster. It's also able to stop anything that's targeting it directly, provided you have that specific card in your hand. So it negates monsters if you've got monsters, spells if you've got spells, or traps if you've got traps. The downside of that is the longer the duel is and the less likely you're going to have the resources in hand, or your opponent might have double utility cards or multiple cards with effects, which means you're not able to shut down each of them. They might try and predict your type of negation and try and use their worst card first, in which case you have to rely on trying to use this effect to negate it. That's the main concern. The other thing is it's only for when it's being targeted. It's not that it can be protected from all types of effects, so just mass effects such as mirror force, drowning mirror force, things like that, anything that doesn't specifically target, this card is susceptible to. Arcana Extra Joker is a light attribute warrior type link monster. Its link arrows are at the top, the bottom left, and the bottom right. It's got 2800 attack and it requires 3 warrior monsters with different names. And its effect is, once per turn, when a spell or trap card or a monster effect is activated that targets this face-up card on the field and or a monster it points to, as a quick effect you can discard the same type of card, monster, spell or trap, negate the activation. When this link summon card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one level 4 warrior normal monster from your deck, and if you do, add one level 4 warrior monster from your deck to your hand. This card is actually a little bit more powerful with its effect than the alternative version, Arcana Knight's Joker, simply because it doesn't have the specific named requirements. It just has to be 3 warrior monsters that have different names. This also has that protection effect not only for itself, but for any monsters that are linked to this card, so it does provide up to another 2 forms of protection for them. And when this card is destroyed, you're then able to bring out your Queen's Knight, which is the normal monster you want, and then you're able to search for a King's Knight to your hand. If you summon that, then you're able to trigger King's Knight's effect to get your Jack's Knight to your hand from your deck to the field. This helps you to go into the fusion if you ever want to use this strategy. Gravekeeper's Spy is a dark attribute spellcaster type level 4 with 1200 attack and 2000 defense. The effect is special summon one Gravekeeper's monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. I don't understand why this card has been reprinted. You've got so many different versions of this very same card, it's not difficult to get. Even some of the older ones are very easily accessible. But it's fine because it helps to support the Gravekeeper archetype. Majestic Dragon is a light attribute dragon type tuner monster. It's a level 1 with the effect. It cannot be used as a synchro material except for the synchro summon of a majestic monster. Now, we've recently had further support for Yusei's Stardust Dragon, so I can only imagine this is the reason this has been introduced into the game. There are a couple of reprints forms, but I think this is still relatively more difficult to access, and so that's why it's been reprinted. Stardust Xiaolong is a light attribute dragon type effect monster. It's a level 1 with 100 attack and 100 defense. Its effect is when you synchro summon Stardust Dragon, you can special summon this card from your graveyard in face-up attack position. Once per turn, if this card would be destroyed by battle, it is not destroyed. This is very much reprinted for the same reason as Majestic Dragon, in that Yusei received some dragon-based support for his Stardust Dragon, and this just helps. It's one of the cards that's really easy to help go into your Majestic Dragon. Rescue Rabbit is an Earth Attribute Beast type level 4 with 300 attack and 100 defense. The effect is it cannot be special summoned from the deck. You can banish this face-up card you control, special summon 2 level 4 or lower normal monsters with the same name from your deck, but destroy them during the end phase. You can only use this effect of Rescue Rabbit once per turn. The only reason I think this card has seen a reprint is because the initial forms of the Magnet Warriors, so you've got Alpha, Beta and Gamma, are all normal monsters. They're all level 4, and so they actually meet this card's condition, so it links towards that archetype. ZW Tornado Bringer is a Wind Attribute Dragon type level 5 with 1300 attack and 1800 defense. And its effect is you can target one Utopia monster you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. It gains 1300 attack. While this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot target that monster with card effects. If a monster equipped with this card would be destroyed by battle, destroy this card instead. You can only control one face-up ZW Tornado Bringer. This has been introduced because you have the Overlay Universe structure deck, which is coming out to support, I think it's 10 years anniversary of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal. Obviously with the Utopia monsters, they have these as equip cards, which are monsters themselves, and so that's the reason for this being reprinted. I think this card is very useful for the archetype itself because firstly it gives a 1300 attack point boost, making your Utopia a 3800 attack monster. It also provides your Utopia with protection from various card effects. Zexal Weapon Ultimate Shield is an Earth Attribute Aqua type level 4 with 0 attack and 2000 defense. And the effect is when this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one of your banished Xyz monsters, special summon that target in face-up defense position. You can target one Utopia monster you control, equip this monster on the field to that target. It gains 2000 defense. You can only control one face-up ZW Ultimate Shield. This is another one of those support cards for Utopia. It does provide it with an extra 2000 defense, making it a 4000 defense monster, which is very protective of it. It also has the ability to revive one of your banished Xyz monsters without you having to run any sort of generic support. ZW Eagle Claw is a Wind Attribute Winged Beast level 5 with 2000 attack and 1200 defense. And its effect is if your opponent's life points are at least 2000 higher than yours, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can target one Utopia monster you control, equip this monster on the field to that target. It gains 2000 attack. Once per turn while this card is equipped to a monster, when a trap card or trap effect that was activated on your opponent's side of the field resolves, negate the effects of that card. You can only control one ZW Eagle Claw. This is actually very easy to summon because provided your opponent has more than 2000 life points than you don't have to sacrifice, you don't have to tribute summon, you could just special summon this instantly. It provides a 2000 attack point boost, making your Utopia 4500 attack, and once per turn it's able to just shut down one of your opponent's trap cards, which is useful depending on the type of matchup you're facing. Again, it being a Utopia support card, it's very much to relate to the reprints of cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal structure deck. Scrap Twin Dragon is an Earth Attribute Dragon type synchro monster. It's a level 9 with 3000 attack and 2200 defense. It requires one Scrap Tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters. And its effect is once per turn you can select one card you control and 2 cards your opponent controls. To destroy the one you control and return the 2 your opponent controls to the hand. When this card is destroyed by your opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, select one non-synchro scrap monster in your graveyard and special summon it. I don't know in particular why this has been reprinted. I'm guessing since some of the Yusei cards have been reprinted and this is to do with the synchro era, this might have that relation to it. Its effect is very useful because its summoning condition isn't difficult to reach. Just having a level 5 and a scrap tuner, which is, for example, I think a couple of them are level 4, which makes it really easy to summon. The effect to destroy one of your scrap cards actually triggers off their effects when they get destroyed by a card effect. and you're able to return 2 of your opponent's cards, which if they put resources into, such as to summon something like a synchro monster, that means they're having to use more resources just to bring out that same monster again. The floating revival effect as the last part is okay as well, because you can go either into a tuner monster or a non-tuner monster depending on your situation, and then go into one of your other scrap synchro monsters. Cloud Castle is a wind attribute machine type synchro monster. It's a level 9 with 0 attack and 3000 defense. It requires a tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, you can target 1 level 9 monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. Level 8 or lower monsters cannot attack the turn they are normal or special summoned. This is another one I'm very confused why they've reprinted. I can only assume this is to do with the whole synchro summoning aspect, but that's my guess. Baxia, Brightness of the Yangtzing, is a light attribute worm type synchro monster. It's a level 8 with 2300 attack and 2600 defense. It requires a tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner worm type monsters. And its effect is, when this card is synchro summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of different original attributes of the worm type monsters used for the synchro summon of this card. Shuffle them into the deck. Once per turn, you can target 1 card you control and 1 level 4 or lower monster in your graveyard. Destroy that card on the field, and if you do, special summon that other monster from your graveyard. The good thing about this card is it allows you to shuffle back any of your opponent's monsters, determined based on the number of attributes that you've used in summoning this card to begin with. That's a decent effect. Potentially you could be getting maybe 3 cards sent back to your opponent's deck, which is more difficult for them to recover from, as opposed to cards which activate their effects from being destroyed by card effects. The other benefit is you're actually within the Yangtzing archetype. They like being destroyed to activate some of their effects and to float into other monsters. This also helps to switch them out from the graveyard and from the monster zone. Chao Feng, Phantom of the Yangtzing, is a light attribute worm type synchro monster. It's a level 9 with 2800 attack and 2200 defense. It requires a tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters to summon it. And its effect is, while the synchro summon card is on the field, your opponent cannot activate effects of monsters with the same original attributes as the Yangtzing monsters used for the synchro summon of this card. When this synchro summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 tuner monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, when a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon 1 worm type monster from your deck in defense position, whose original attribute matches the original attribute that one of those destroyed monsters had on the field. I remember when this card originally came out, people were very hyped about it, because based on the different attributes you used to bring out this card, you could potentially shut down maybe 3 or 4 of your opponent's different attributes of monsters. And since the Yangtzings actually work within all 6 of the attributes, that is not too difficult to achieve. If you know what type of deck your opponent is running and that they're limited to the types of attributes they're using, you're able to restrict their plays and to stop them from activating any abilities. Of course, if this is actually destroyed by battle or card effect, you're then able to just search out for a tuner monster. It's a decent effect, but it's not the main part. That was the first bit that I mentioned. And the other thing is, when a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle, then you're just able to replace it with a worm type monster from your deck. It has to be the same attribute, which is fine, but you will be limited if your opponent is only running, say for example, 1 attribute in their deck. Number 39, Utopia, is a light attribute warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2500 attack and 2000 defense. It requires 2 level 4 monsters to summon it, and when a monster declares an attack, you can detach 1 material from this card, negate the attack. If this card is targeted for an attack while it has no material, destroy this card. Again, this is a card that was the key one used by Yuma Tsukumo within Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, and alongside the structure deck, that's why this has been reprinted. A Volatile Dolker is a fire attribute dragon type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2300 attack and 1700 defense. And its effect is, it requires 2 level 4 dinosaur type monsters. During either player's turn, when a monster effect activates, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. This was used alongside a dino rabbit build which combined dinosaur type monsters with rescue rabbits, so that's why that's a reprint as well. Basically the idea was to bring out either things like Cabazals and then to just Xyz summon either this or Lagia, and therefore you could either stop your opponent's spell or trap cards, or with this effect you're able to shut down your opponent's monster effects and to destroy those monsters, making it very difficult for your opponent to actually do anything without you negating them. Wind Up Arsenal Zen Mao is a wind attribute machine type Xyz monster. It's a rank 5 with 2600 attack and 1900 defense. It requires 2 level 5 monsters to summon it, and once per turn you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card to target 2 set cards on the field and destroy them. This is actually very usable for a couple of reasons. It can target your opponent's spell and trap zone, but it can also target their opponent's monsters that are in face down defense position. Either way is actually usable. It's more effective on monsters because they cannot trigger their effects to be able to flip themselves over to stop this effect, whereas spell and trap cards might be able to if it's a quick play spell card, or if it's just a trap card they can actually respond before those cards get destroyed. Number C39, Utopia Ray is a light attribute warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2500 attack and 2000 defense. The materials required are 3 level 4 light monsters. And its effect is you can also Xyz summon this card by using a number 39 Utopia you control as the Xyz material. Xyz materials attached to that monster also become Xyz materials on this card. You can detach 1 Xyz material from this card. It gains 500 attack, and 1 monster your opponent controls loses 1000 attack until the end phase. You must have 1000 life points or less to activate and to resolve this effect. This is very much a game-changing card. If you're very low on life points, it can make the difference between winning and losing, but it's very specific and you have to be on very low life points to actually use this effect. Overall, the reason it's been reprinted alongside things like number 39 Utopia is because of the release of the new structure deck celebrating 10 years of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal anime. Constellar Ptolemy M7 is a light attribute machine type Xyz monster. It's a rank 6 with 2700 attack and 2000 defense. It requires 2 level 6 monsters, and the effect is you can also Xyz summon this card by using a Constellar Xyz monster you control as the Xyz material. Other than Constellar Ptolemy M7, Xyz materials attached to that monster also become Xyz materials on this card. If summoned this way, the following effect cannot be activated this turn. Once per turn, you can attach 1 Xyz material from this card, then target 1 monster on the field or in either player's graveyard, return that target to the hand. The benefit of this card is it's able to instantly get rid of one of your opponent's monsters, for example. That means you can use it as like a compulsory evacuation device within a monster form, enabling you to attack directly with this card. Zexal Weapon Leo Arms is a light attribute beast type Xyz monster. It's a rank 5 with 3000 attack and 1200 defense. It requires 2 level 5 monsters. This card cannot attack your opponent directly. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, add 1 Zexal Weapon monster from your deck to your hand. You can target 1 Utopia monster you control, equip this monster on the field to that target. It gains 3000 attack during your battle phase. If a monster attacked this turn while equipped with this card, you can send this equipped card to the graveyard. The monster that was equipped with this card can make a second attack on an opponent's monster during this battle phase. So the reason why this is in the pack is because you've got both Eagle Claw and Tornado Bringer, which are level 5 monsters. Those were the 2 monsters that were used to Xyz summon into this card. The benefit of this card is, firstly, it's able to detach a material from itself to just search for any of your Zexal Weapon monsters. Depending on your situation, you can choose which effects are best served during that time. You're also able to just equip this directly to your Utopia, making it a 5500 attack monster, which is very difficult to outclass. And the other thing is, you're able to just get rid of this card to let your Utopia attack twice within the turn. It does have to be on monsters, which is the slight limitation of it, but you didn't want it to be overly broken, so that's why they had that limitation. Number 49, Fortune Tune is a light attribute winged beast type Xyz monster. It's a rank 3 with 400 attack and 900 defense. It requires 2 level 3 monsters, and the effect, during each of your standby phases, gain 500 life points. This card cannot be targeted by card effects. If this face-up card would be destroyed, you can detach one Xyz material from this card instead. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, target 2 level 3 monsters in your graveyard, shuffle them both into the deck, and if you do, return this card from your graveyard to the extra deck. You can only use this effect of number 49 Fortune Tune once per turn. Of all the number monsters they decided to reprint, I don't understand why they've gone for this one. It's a little bit of an annoying card, and it doesn't really help you in any way. If you're on low life points, 500 points isn't going to make a difference. Fine, it's consistent every turn, but you've got a card known as Golden Ladybird, where if you essentially just reveal it once per turn and it maintains in your hand, you gain 500 life points, and that's consistent within your turns. This does have the protection of being, unable to be destroyed or targeted by card effects, but it's really likely to, use its protection effect from when it's being attempted to be destroyed by battle. That means at most it can last a couple of turns. The monsters you're able to reshuffle into your deck is fine, but it doesn't move the game state for you, and the other thing is this just goes back to the extra deck. It might have been more useful if it had a revival effect where it could just bring itself actually back from the graveyard with the materials attached. Number F0 Utopic Future is a light attribute warrior type Xyz monster. It's got a rank of 0 with 0 attack and 0 defense, and its effect is it requires 2 Xyz monsters with the same rank except number monsters. It cannot be destroyed by battle, and neither player takes any battle damage from attacks involving this card. At the end of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can take control of that opponent's monster until the end of the battle phase. If this face-up card on the field would be destroyed by a card effect, you can detach one material from this card instead. The benefits of this card is it prevents itself or you taking any battle damage from this card. It doesn't let your opponent take any battle damage either, so you could argue it is quite neutral, but it does let you steal one of your opponent's monsters, and then potentially you're able to use that for an Xyz play, which is the general idea. It does have protection from card effects as well by using its materials, but the summoning requirements for this type of monster are quite steep. You need 2 Xyz monsters with the same rank, and that means you're going to have to summon those monsters properly first to then come into this monster. Infinite Cards is a continuous spell card with the effect there is no limit to the number of cards in players' hands. This actually does relate to King's Court very well, because it's meant to directly support Sly for the Sky Dragon, and this was actually used in a match where Marek was controlling this puppet, where Marek was controlling this mime, and he gave the mime the Sly for the Sky Dragon card. Basically, it means that if you've got a limitless hand, it can continually gain attack points, 1,000 times the number of cards currently in the hand. Before this card came out, it would have only had 6,000 attack points at most, and every other card you try and draw after that has to be discarded. But now it means you can potentially draw almost your entire deck, and therefore have it into maybe even over 20,000 attack points plus, if you really are able to manage that. Reinforcement of the Army is a normal spell card with the effect add 1 level 4 or lower warrior monster from your deck to your hand. Both Queen's Knight and King's Knight meet this condition, and so since they're the signature cards for this pack, that's why it helps support warrior type monsters. The Warrior Returning Alive is a normal spell card with the effect target 1 warrior type monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. Since most of the cards been introduced within King's Court are warrior type, this is the reason this has been reprinted for them. Ties of the Brethren is a normal spell card with the effect pay 2,000 life points, then target 1 level 4 or lower monster you control. For the rest of this turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. Also special summon 2 monsters from your deck with the same type, attribute and level as that monster, but with different names from each other and that monster. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card. I'm sure within the Knights you've got various other monsters that do meet the same level requirement. I know Queen's Knight and King's Knight are both level 4 monsters, and I suppose there are some generic warrior monsters you can run which meet these other conditions of being the same type and attribute as well as the level. This card has seen play before and is very splashable within most types of decks if they're running a very specific theme deck, and actually works a lot more closely with Xyz summoning. Pot of Duality is a normal spell card with the effect excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 of them to your hand. Also after that, shuffle the rest back into your deck. You can only activate one Pot of Duality per turn. You cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. I think this is a very consistent card, and it's one that has been very usable and expensive in the past. Maybe because of how old some of the reprints are, it probably is going to be the same. That's why I think actually reprinting this is very intelligent. It can be splashed into any decks. Unexpected Die is a normal spell card with the effect, if you control no monsters, special summon one level 4 or lower normal monster from the deck. Now, Queen's Knight meets this condition very easily. You've also got things such as the picture you've seen in the image, which is Warrior Digrapher, and that actually relates and ties well to how the deck wants to run. World Legacy Guard Dragon is a continuous spell card with the effect, when this card is activated, you can target one level 4 or lower dragon type monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand or special summon it. Once per turn, you can target one dragon monster you control, move that monster you control to another of your main monster zones. You can only activate one World Legacy Guard Dragon per turn. I don't understand why this card has been introduced within this set, considering that it's meant to be supporting warrior type monsters over things like dragons. I didn't see within the list anything related to dragons, which confuses me. Maybe it's just one of those random reprints that they've decided to go along with. Lightning Storm is a normal spell card with the effect, if you control no face-up cards, activate one of these effects. Destroy all face-up attack position monsters your opponent controls, or destroy all spell and trap cards your opponent controls. You can only activate one Lightning Storm per turn. The idea of this card is it acts either as a Raigeki or as a Harpy's Feather Duster to your opponent. It's very effective and it has been very expensive in the past. It being very recent hasn't had many in terms of reprints and is actually helping to let younger players and those with less income stay in the game with some of the more competitive cards. Rivalry of Warlords is a continuous trap card with the effect, each player can only control one type of monster. Send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. This is intended as a floodgate trap card to stop your opponent from going into mass different types of monsters through Xyz summoning or using any other extra deck type of monster. It's a major counter to certain decks, unless they're archetype specific, in which they do tend to rely on one type. Converging Wishes is a normal trap card with the effect, if you have 5 or more dragon type synchro monsters with different names in your graveyard, special summon one Stardust Dragon from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon but banish it during the end phase. Equip it with this card. While equipped, it gains attack equal to the combined attack of all dragon type synchro monsters in your graveyard. Also, while equipped, when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish one dragon type synchro monster from your graveyard. It can attack an opponent's monster again in a row. This was the card used at the end of the anime for Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, where Yusei was facing the zone. It was the initial card that led to Zone's defeat, because he essentially had all of the other Signer Dragons in his graveyard to be able to continually attack into the opponent's Time Lord monsters and therefore do enough damage to reduce his opponent's life points to 0. The Wicked Dreadroot is a Dark Attribute Fiend type level 10 with 4000 attack and 4000 defense. Its effect, this card cannot be special summoned, this card cannot be normal summoned or set except by tributing 3 monsters. Half the attack and defense of all monsters on the field except this card. This is one of the alternative versions of the God cards. The Wicked series, you've got 3 of them, you've got Dreadroot, you've got Erase and you've got Avatar. Each of them have different abilities. This one happens to half all monsters on the field of both their attack and defense, other than this card. That means if you're trying to get rid of this by battle, you're virtually impossible. You need very specific combinations of cards to do this. I'm thinking of things like Zane Truesdale's deck, which can boost its attack points to something like 16,000 with things like limiter removal and actually some of the fusion cards themselves, Power Bond being an example as well. But outside of those very gimmicky decks, there's very difficult to actually outcompete this card just in battle. The Wicked Avatar is a Dark Attribute Fiend type level 10 with question mark attack and question mark defense. And its effect is, this card cannot be special summoned, it must be normal summoned or set by tributing 3 monsters. If this card is normal summoned, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards until the end of their second turn after this effect is activated. This card's attack and defense are equal to the highest attack on the field plus 100, except the Wicked Avatar. The purpose of this card is it's always going to be 100 attack and defense over any monster on the field. be it your own or your opponent's. If it happens to be your opponent, that's a decent enough effect because that means you're guaranteed to be able to overrun your opponent's monsters. But actually, if you can trigger it off of your own monsters being the strongest, that means you have more control over to what this card's attack points are going to look like. If your opponent's running very weak monsters and you have nothing face up, then this is obviously just going to be a weak monster in itself. And the nice thing is, when it's summoned, it's instantly able to shut down your opponent's spell and trap cards from activating, which gives you a couple of turns to use this card for free without having to deal with your opponent's back row. And the final card is the Wicked Eraser. This is Dark Attribute Fiend type level 10 with question mark attack and question mark defense. And the effect is this card cannot be special summoned, this card cannot be normal summoned or set, except by attributing 3 monsters. The attack and defense of this card are each equal to the number of cards your opponent controls times 1,000. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, destroy all cards on the field. During your main phase, you can destroy this card. The benefit of this card is it gains power based on your opponent's cards. If they've got more cards on their field, this could be over 3,000 attack points, and the same for its defense points. Or it is very determined on your opponent. If they've got barely anything on the field, obviously this isn't going to be particularly strong. But whenever it's destroyed, it's able to wipe out any cards on the field. If you've got less than your opponent, they're going to suffer more of a loss. And the other thing is you can actually trigger off its destruction effect yourself. You don't have to rely on your opponent doing anything to this card. I think the reprints for this set are quite useful, and there are some key ones such as Lightning Storm, which are definitely needed to be picked up. But there are also some very questionable ones, like for example Volatile Dolker, which lots of people are not using at the moment. And even things like Rescue Rabbit are just not that justified for now, they're a bit forgotten about. What is your favourite reprint within the set? Leave that in the comments down below, again with your least favourites if you want to put that as well. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.